My name is Carson Steelman, and this is On Air with Heritage Action, a podcast built for conservatives. Twice a week, we break down some of the most important issues facing our country and talk about how you can get involved today in the fight for conservative values. Today, we're joined again by Ryan Walker, the Vice President for Government Relations for Heritage Action. We're going to talk about some of the immigration stuff that everyone's been talking about and that we've been seeing on the news this week. So, Ryan, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
So one of the big things in the immigration world that we've been hearing about this week has been the EAGLE Act. Can you talk a little bit about what the EAGLE Act is, what's in it, why it's coming up now, and kind of what past iterations of this legislation have looked like?
Yeah. So the EAGLE Act is a piece of legislation that is, in theory, supposed to be changing the way our legal immigration structure works here in the United States. So currently, under current law, we have in place country caps. So each country has a certain percentage of the total number of visa allotments that they're allowed to get for their population that have applied for various visa programs into the United States. Well, this legislation removes those caps under the veil of providing equal opportunity for all countries, because what has happened is there's such a significant population in India and China that have applied, that there's a 20-year backlog on average for those two countries. And the idea of removing country caps is to put everyone on more of an even field in terms of who can get in and who can't. But this bill does it in a bad way, and it has extra provisions that allow for end runarounds on those limitations broadly. So more specifically, the bill has a special section that allows for what's called adjustment. So any non-immigrant temporary visa holder, so think of folks like students, some folks that come over here for certain employment types of visas, all of those individuals would now be allowed, once they're in country for 2 years, to apply for adjustment, to get a green card. Temporary visa holders are not automatically entered into a draft or a process to get a green card. This is a special provision that allows an end runaround to get into the green card space. Now, once it gets even more egregious, because once these foreign nationals get here and they're on a temporary visa and then they apply for adjustment, then they're all of a sudden given a green card, and quickly after that comes citizenship. And once you're a citizen, you're allowed to sponsor an immeasurable number of family members and others that can come over here with your sponsorship. So this bill, what it really does is, sure, it removes country caps, but it does so in a very misguided way. It has no protections for Communist Party members coming over from China. It has no language or structure in there for keeping the numbers of Chinese and Indian nationals that get that benefit over the next 9 years, more predominantly than any other country. It has no provision to keep that from just exploding to be only India and Chinese nationals that are getting into the country now. And again, it provides basically a loophole to get green cards, citizenship, and chain migration. It's a bad bill.
Yeah, and I want to go back to all that, and I think it's just hysterical to me that this is what the Democrats think that everybody wants to focus on when it comes to immigration right now. But I really want to focus on one of the points you just made about China. Yeah. So it's well documented that the CCP uses and manipulates our own immigration system to send over Chinese spies and folks to steal our intellectual property.
Right.
So it's really fascinating that while the Democrats try to be tough on China and try to talk about how they're standing up to Beijing and all this, they're still rallying behind this bill. So can you talk a little bit more about the aspect with China? Because it's not just, we don't want Chinese people here. It's that we know for a fact the CCP, our adversaries, are manipulating our own immigration system.
Yeah, and that's something that I think that it's really important. The Chinese Communist Party has a very defined mission in this. They want to get their individuals, their nationals into the country so that they can work in and operate in industries of importance, industries of the future, industries of innovation, into our education system, the universities, basic research, all of those things, so that they can then take that intellectual capital back to China, reproduce it, and then win out on those industries in question in the research and university arms, and ultimately economically hold dominion over the United States. That is the true aim of China and the Communist Party. Now, I think it's important to talk about the Chinese people in this equation, because it's not that we don't want Chinese people necessarily coming over. It's that those individuals from China who do come over are inevitably tied to the CCP. They are only given that access and ability to come to the United States with the permission of the CCP. And because of that permission and the relationship that exists between the people and their form of government, their authoritarian form of government, there is no way to truly protect against nefarious actions by these individuals. Now, something even I think is more egregious that has come to light recently in this bill is that Democrats sort of recognize this problem, and they're giving show to it. So they have a manager's amendment in the House this week that gets at this tries to get at this problem. It requires that Chinese nationals in their application have to check a box. All they have to do is take a pen and mark a little box that says, I am not affiliated with, nor have I ever been affiliated with the Communist Party. Well, right. Listen, if you are working in what you think is your national interest to come over here and subvert the United States, you aren't going to willingly submit to immigration control that you were a Communist Party member and you're a toting, member of the party. You will lie on those application documents. Even worse, that manager's amendment only addresses H-1B workers. So it's only a subsect of the immigrants that could come over here. It's not student visas or any of the temporary employment programs, right? So those protections don't exist for any other category. And if you want to call them protections, they only exist for H-1Bs.
Yeah. So it's wild that this is what they're focusing on. I mean, our border is on fire. You have fentanyl in record high amounts crossing the border. It's now the leading cause of death for young people. You have migrant caravans. You have dangerous cartels controlling the southern border, assaulting people on their dangerous journey. Yeah. And then you have Congress focusing on the Eagle Act.
Yeah.
And then, of course, too, the other thing I want to talk about this week is the Cinema framework for, quote, comprehensive immigration reform, because we haven't heard that before. So they have decided that they're coming together with this bipartisan deal to reform our immigration system. Yeah. We don't know a lot about it right now, just some of the basics. Can you talk about what we do know or what we can expect to come out of something like that?
Yeah, listen, the Biden administration has given up operational control of the border. They don't care to have it. They don't care to know who comes in and who goes out of the country. They want to release immigrants the second that they see them, detain them, or encounter them at all. They have record number of gotaways. They have record number of encounters at the border. All those folks come into the interior almost immediately. So, Carson, you're right that it is absurd that they are focusing on immigration proposals that are wholly disconnected from the situation of the southern border. But to the Cinema agreement that has been rumored out there this week, they have apparently agreed on a framework for dealing with DACA recipients to remain in country and get all of the benefits and things that they have desired for ever since the Obama administration stepped in to keep them from being deported. It's a framework to allow them to stay and to get amnesty, right? And they have vague notions in there towards border security. They increase money to the Border Patrol. They add money to pots that would stand up new sensor systems and have new cameras and drones and all these other things. But it doesn't matter. None of that matters if you don't have an administration that wants to actually protect the border, or a Congress who will act to force the administration to deal with the situation at the southern border. And I think that Tillis and Senator Tillis and Senator Sinema are doing a disservice here, right? They are providing an out for the administration on all of these issues that we've been raising for the past 2 years. And it obviously they're doing it in the lame duck. This is, the playbook that they all go by when they want to get something snuck through without, the American people really having much insight into what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this to me just seems like such an unserious attempt at true border security. They're trying to, make headlines. The left is trying to say, oh, here's what we're doing to protect the border. We're going to plus up all these accounts when it's really not going to have pretty much any effect on actual border security. And when it goes to the DACA recipients, the 2 million people here already, that it's not just those 2 million people. Stuff like this, all these compromises that have happened before, they all end the same way, and they all end up incentivizing and encouraging migrants to continue to make this dangerous journey, especially with younger children. Oh, yeah. That's neither compassionate nor good policy to try and, continue allowing or incentivizing, encouraging people to come over, and especially to put their safety and their well-being in the hands of cartel members. Yeah. How do you think that this is going to play out in the long term with incentivizing more people?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the advertising campaign that the cartels will take up, right? 2 million people just got amnesty in the United States. You could too for the low price of $30,000 or whatever the cartels are charging folks at the border to come across now, right? This is their bread and butter. The cartels are singing at the southern border today because they're hearing proposals like this. What they need to hear is an administration who's serious about implementing true border security, stopping every immigrant that's coming across the border, having folks on the border doing the patrols necessary, and aren't afraid to confront them head on and demand that this stuff stop. To again re-engage with the Mexican government, to institute policies like Remain in Mexico, to build out forward operating centers in countries south of the border to stop some of these migrant trains coming up. I mean, all of these things that we've been advocating for years are thrown by the wayside when you have unserious proposals like this. And we've seen these types of proposals again and again and again for almost a decade now. That we need to stop. The American people have made it very obvious from 2016, probably before that, but certainly starting in 2016 with the Trump presidency, building the wall, right? We need to continue that. It was working. We need to get back to that.
Right. And so obviously we don't have a lot of time left in lame duck, but a lot can happen. Yeah. So what would you encourage folks to do on both the Eagle Act and the Tillis Cinema agreement for right now?
Yeah, they need to weigh in with their members. There are 2 must-pass pieces of legislation, as we've talked about many times, the National Defense Authorization Act and some sort of government appropriations package that will have to come before the end of the year. Now, all these conversations become end-of-the-year items all of the sudden. And so I would just remain vigilant. And we've asked you to weigh in on these items already. And this is another point to raise with your member of Congress, that immigration reform should not be done in the dark of night behind closed doors without the American public's general knowledge. There should be a robust debate on the House and Senate floor. There should be a robust amendment process so that conservatives and others can have their voices heard, and that the bill that should be debated should be centered around border security. The American people support that overwhelmingly, and most of the House of Representatives does too. So I think next Congress, that has to be the first step. I'd encourage you all to call your representative, demand that none of this stuff rides on any of these packages passing here in the last waning weeks of the year, and demand that they take true action on border security next Congress.
Yeah, and I know we always talk about calling your representatives and calling your senators, and I really want to drive home how important that is. I mean, you worked as a legislative director on Capitol Hill for a long time. Yep. Do you really feel like that those calls made a difference?
Yeah, they do, 100%. I've told this story many times, but we would take a daily tally of what type of calls and letters and emails we were getting into the office, what type of correspondence we were getting. The members sometimes pick up the phone or write responses to those letters themselves. They see what their constituents are writing. Their staff is tasked. In fact, they have an entire staff position whose only job is to take in, sort, and disseminate what their constituency is saying to the rest of the staff. So yes, it can seem like you're beating your head against the wall the more and more you do it. Oftentimes the canned responses from staff are just that, they're canned responses. But know full well that those comments and that sentiment is getting to the member, and it is absolutely coloring how the legislative staff of any office has to approach the issue. Because let's face it, in the House, election season is already on. We just had the election in November, but campaigns are already starting again. Members are, 2-year cycles are brutal, and they're aware intimately of what their constituents believe. So keep up the pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll continue to have resources, all sorts of information on our website at heritageaction.com, so you can figure out the best way to contact your representative that's easiest for you, what you should say, what you should instead ask them to do. We'll also have updates on the status of the legislation, both on our website and on social media. So be sure to keep in touch. There really is no bigger fight we need to get involved with right now. Border security is going to be the top priority, or should be the top priority, for the next Republican Congress in January. So the more we can do now, the more groundwork we can lay, the better that fight will turn out for conservatives. So thanks again for joining us today, Ryan, and keep us posted.
Thanks for having me.
That's it for another episode of On Air with Heritage Action. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard in today's episode, please click the follow button. If you want to receive a text message each time a new episode airs, text podcast to 51776 and you'll never miss an episode. That's podcast to 51776. Hi, it's me again, and we need your help. If you like the insights and activist resources we are providing, please take 1 minute and help us spread the word. Share this episode with friends and family on social media, email, or text. We need everyone's help in the fight to hold Washington accountable. And don't forget, you are also able to subscribe and listen to episodes on your smartphone. Just open up your favorite podcast app and search for On Air with Heritage Action. Click subscribe and download episodes so that you can take them with you on the go. It's the best way to make sure you never miss a thing. Thanks.